Assalamu alaikum friends, this is Dr. Olsi Jazexhi. I'm today in Geneva, Switzerland. Today is 23 February 2020. With me is Mr. Halmurat. He's an Uyghur activist. We have had a video before together. And today we're going to talk about a topic that is causing so much controversy among our Uyghur friends. When was it? Maybe 2 or 3 days ago? A couple days ago, I made a video with the title "The Uyghur Issue and Islamic Perspective." And in this video, I was in a way criticizing British academician, Dr. David Tobin. Dr. David had written an open letter to the BBC in which he was asking from the BBC to remove references to Islam when it comes to the Uyghurs. And because of this letter and because of what I've seen happening in the Uyghur community, where we have different kind of people and opinions, and I've seen, during my experience with the Uyghurs, my experience with the Uyghurs has started since August 2019, when I visited the concentration camps in East Turkestan or Xinjiang. And since that time, I've been in touch with many different Uyghur groups and people, and I've seen that we have different approaches when it comes to the Uyghur issue. In the video that I made, I approached the Uyghur issue from an Islamic perspective. As a Muslim that I am, and as a person who sees the Uyghur issue through the viewpoint of Islam, I was very upset with the letter of Dr. David, but not only that, but even with some other people that I have met in the past few months, who, when I speak about the Uyghurs, when I tell, for example, that when I visited China, Xinjiang, East Turkestan, the Chinese authorities were arresting these people and discriminating these people because they are Muslim, I've seen other people who say, do not bring Islam here. I've seen such a people in some European capitals, but even in North America. And these people, when they speak about the Uyghur issue, they want to perceive it from a secular point of view. We have Uyghur Christians as well, who perceive the issue from a secular point of view. And there is a rich variety of opinions when it comes to the Uyghur issue. Now, my video, it seems that shocked some people in your Uyghur community. We had Arslan Hidayat, an Uyghur who lives in Australia and keeps beer.
Actually, he born and raised in Australia, and he was based in Turkey. Now he's working somewhere else. Yeah,
he's not in Australia.
And he is one of my good brothers.
So yeah, with us we have even Halmurat, who is a friend of Arslan. And in the video that Arslan made, he was very angry, even yelling at me.
I'm not agree with you on this point because, you know, people have a different way of express themselves or their opinions. And I don't see that he is angry. He just used some, you know, way of expressions to, you know, express you his opinion, and he don't agree with your point of view. So I'm not hiding that I don't agree with some of your points, and some of your points, of course, I agree with you. And today we've been, you know, debating but very friendly way. Because of this debate, we start to understand each other a lot more than before, and we respect each other. At least I respect Mr. Olsi more than before because I understand him more, and my brotherly emotion to Mr. Olsi is stronger than before. Although, despite our different opinions, despite our different approach of the same problem, we are like, you know, approaching the one problem from different angles, from different directions. Everything we've done, everything we do so far is sake of our Uyghur brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let us discuss some of the objections that you had
Yes.
in my video.
Yeah. I'm about to.
Okay, tell me what was wrong in my video.
In my opinion, I mean, like you said, like some Uyghurs, you don't directly use this word, but you see some Uyghurs or Uyghur organizations are pawn of the CIA or America or US. I mean, like, I don't really agree with you on this point. I mean, like, they use every possibility within their environment to struggle to reach the help our brothers and sisters who are in our homeland facing this atrocity, and I don't see anything wrong with this.
I do not see anything wrong with it as well, but in my video I was talking about how Western governments and certain Western interests are trying to manipulate the Uyghur issue, number one. Number two is because my issue was related to the way how Dr. David was asking BBC not to mention Islam when they talk about the Uyghurs.
Can I?
No, let me finish. And as a historian that I am, I've studied the history of nationalism and Muslim nationalisms in many parts of the world. And I'm very sensitive to the Westerners when they intervene and manipulate the identities of Muslim people. Now, I mentioned in my video that, among others, that the Uyghur community today, their leaders, from what I see them from outside, and I might be mistaken, because after all, I'm not an Uyghur, I'm an outsider for you guys. I've seen that Uyghurs today, they lack a united leadership, number one. Number two, some of their organizations, this is I think what I mentioned in my video, get USA funding, that get CIA funding. Let me finish. For this sentence that I said, Mr. Arslan, but even many others who commented on my Facebook and Twitter, they accused me of being a liar, of making up things. I provided some links, and if you go to the website of NAD, you will find some Uyghur organizations that get funding. Now, getting funding from the Americans is not a sin, number one. Number two is Uyghurs, when they fight for their cause, they do not fight because they are being paid by the Americans. I didn't say anything like that, but I said that. Now, when you have foreigners who sponsor your struggle, you don't have the freedom to act. And my mentioning of foreign funding for the Uyghurs was in relation to the Muslim world, because I see the struggle of the Uyghur people as a Muslim struggle. I see Uyghurs as part of the Islamic world. And what I was mentioning in my video is that sometimes, because in many occasions, many Uyghurs complain to me and tell me why the Muslim world doesn't support us. And what I was mentioning in my video is that many Muslim countries perceive the Uyghurs as some people who are being paid by the Americans. I mean, majority, the Uyghurs have no relation with this, but there are some organizations that get funding. And as I mentioned before, it is not wrong to get funding from somebody, but the thing is that, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, and I might be very wrong, I think that Uyghurs should have more independence when they deal with their national issue. Mm-hmm. In my video, I also mentioned that for me, the Uyghur issue is an Islamic issue, But for this, I was attacked, and there is a big debate going on now on Facebook and on Twitter, where the Uyghur community has been separated in different parts. Some perceive their struggle as an Islamic struggle, others perceive it as a secular struggle, others, they say religion has nothing to do with it. Now you can comment and tell me.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for your tireless work and contributing our cause. I mean, like, people have different opinions. Uyghurs are so divided. At this point, I agree. And I mean, like, some words that you use on your video, it says like, oh, they're funded by CIA. Okay, I don't think anybody funded by CIA. Maybe there are some, but I don't know. We don't have evidences. And I mean, like, when we are approaching this problem, because we have different opinions, and we don't have to convince each other to become like ourselves. Like you said, it is only the Islamic problem, which it is part of, true, because the Uyghurs are the majority Muslim, and since the Qur'an Qagnet, like the 11th century until now, Uyghurs remain as a Muslim. So that during this about 1,000 years time, Uyghurs not, you know, the majority population haven't changed their faith. Although there are some subgroups or the religious minorities among Uyghurs, and there are atheists, and there are agnostics, and there are even communists, you know, some people working for a communist party in the Chinese administration to control Uyghurs. I mean, and abroad we have different sects, different groups, different, you know, the divided groups who have different opinions, but it depends like who are our audience and what we believe. Everything what we do tirelessly, it is going to help our people and preserve our beloved nation, which serves Uyghur nation. At the same time, it serves majority Uyghur Muslim, which means, like, as you say, serving for the Muslim Ummah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this. And, well, because Chinese government using this discourse say Uyghurs are funded by the CIA, it is a CIA game, so it's not true. What we are doing is just educating them, helping them to washing the extreme ideologies or opinions or the sickness from their minds. They are selling this to the West. And what you are saying, it would empower what China says. Still, you can have your different opinion. Despite over, you know, the differences, I still respect you. And I don't think, well, I know like somebody today called Mr. Olsi, says, oh, you have to delete your video, and I don't agree with this, although some of the points are really painful for me.
What is painful? Mention.
I mean, like, when you say, like, Uyghurs, some Uyghurs are paid by the CIA.
So what is wrong with it? It is a fact. Well, you can go to the webpage of NAD, you can Google Uyghurs, and you'll find a number of organizations who get money from NAD. But this is not a problem, and I do not understand why you are problematizing this.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not problematizing this. I mean, like, can I just finish this one?
No, I mentioned.
Can I just finish this one, please? I mean, like, well, okay, you believe it is a choice, and it is your choice, which I don't believe, and I don't agree with. Despite this, it doesn't change one fact, that the atrocity, the unbelievable, bloody atrocity, that genocide happening to Uyghur people, the atrocity faced by Uyghur people. So we both agree on this point, despite our different opinions. I mean, that's it, yeah.
Yes, we do agree that Uyghurs are suffering.
Yeah.
And
although, as for example, what you said is true, for example, although some Uyghurs are, or some Uyghur organizations funded by the CIA, I don't believe this, but although that is true, it cannot change the fact, and we still need support from our Muslim brothers and sisters.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, for your information, I'm at the web page of NAD.
You don't have to name those organizations.
And here you have, I'm not showing all of them, you have the list and the amount of money they receive.
Yes.
So this is something public, is in the public domain. But I mean,
there's one thing you say that because some organizations receive the money and they have to accept, or the NAD or America or any of the Western power, example what you say, they push them to accept kind of mindset that they are designing.
Yes,
for them, right?
so this is an important point that we need to discuss.
Yes, they can struggle for Uyghur cause within their ability, within their possibility, within their capability. And you and the others, so you don't need to, make it fight. I'm not accusing you or make it fight. I mean, some understand it, make it fight, right? So, because our direction is the same. Just like we are different people, our goal is climb up the same mountain from different angles. People from this side, they're climbing.
One second, I don't think it is, we're problematizing on the sentence that I said. My whole idea, what was it? Was that there are some people in the West who are trying to change the agenda of the Uyghurs, number one, who are trying to de-Islamize the identity of the Uyghurs. And this is what I do not like, number one. Number two is, Uyghurs today, they need a real leadership. As we were speaking before, Uyghurs today, they need a real leadership that will also approach the Muslim world.
Yeah,
because
the
content of my previous video was that there is a big skepticism in the Muslim world when it comes to the Uyghurs. And the thing is how we can resolve it. And the letter...
demonizing others.
No, not demonizing others, but you should be more independent. And you should not be ashamed from your Islamic identity.
Absolutely.
Because what I've seen in the comments that I've received on Facebook and Twitter, there are some Uyghurs who do not want to be identified with Islam and Muslims. And this is a kind of hidden Islamophobia that is growing on within your community among few individuals, but who are individuals with influence. And the thing is, the Uyghurs should not have this kind of inferiority complex of being Muslim. Being Muslim is something great, number one. Number two is China that is fighting you, that is sending you into concentration camps. In its white papers, they are fighting you because you are Muslim. The people that I interviewed when I went to Aksu and Kashgar, they told me that they were sent into these concentration camps because they had read Quran, because they had put hijab, because they believed in Allah, because they wrote on internet that a good Muslim should pray 5 times per day. But what I see happening in the West, there are some Uyghurs who tell me, you do not mention these things when we talk with the Westerners. Exactly what Dr. David was saying. But my opinion is that we should not hide the truth. We should tell the reality. And on the other hand, I perceive that Uyghurs in different countries and communities where they are growing and developing even sometimes antagonistic positions towards each other. I have seen people who, for example, have insulted me, the Uyghur women who wear hijab. They've told me, this is not our culture, not our tradition, etc. And I've told to these people, but listen, if you do not like those Uyghurs who are Muslim and practice their religion, you are doing exactly what the Communist Party of China is doing with the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Because the Communist Party of China in Xinjiang detains the Uyghurs, send them into concentration camps, and forces them to renounce Islam. And when I see this kind of Islamophobia among some Uyghurs, I'm really disturbed.
Yeah, can I?
Yeah.
Well, we have a different opinion here. I believe root of the Uyghur problem or Uyghur cause or Uyghur struggle, it's not only because we are Muslim, because we are the rightful owner of our ancestral homeland. And the very existence of Uyghur identity and Islam or Islamic culture is a very important part of the Uyghur culture. So, our very existence, being Uyghur, is being attacked by the Chinese government. Not only because we are a Muslim, because there are some cases. For example, I mentioned to you this Uyghur sister who are not, sharing same face like us, and she openly says like she was raised by atheist family and she is an atheist, but her family is still being targeted. And there are some cases, some Uyghurs are not even Muslim and they never practiced real, the Islam in their everyday life, but they are still being targeted. I mean, like, being Uyghur is being targeted, and Islam is very, very important part of Uyghur identity. So when we say, okay, the Uyghur issue is the Muslim issue, at the same time, we cannot deny the very existence of Uyghur identity, Uyghur culture, Uyghur language being attacked.
Of course, we cannot deny.
And there is over 400 Uyghur intellectuals. Some of them are, that never practiced any religion. Of course. And some of them are communists, the member of Communist Party. They are still being attacked because they are preserving, they are Uyghur allies, right? They are preserving Uyghur identity, Uyghur culture. And the Uyghur identity, if China afraid Uyghur identity is strengthened by time or by Uyghur elites' contribution, then Uyghurs in the future could demand or fight for greater autonomy or even for the independence. Uyghur nationalism will rise, and the Islamic belief is part of Uyghur nationalism. We cannot deny this. Even the Uyghur atheists, Uyghur Christians, if you see them, if you look at them, when you talk to them, they are still preserving the Islamic identity. They don't eat pork, and they don't, the curse, and they don't blaspheming against the Prophet Muhammad or the Islam. So, I mean, like, when we are talking about the Uyghurs being attacked, we cannot just single...
but it is not only the Uyghurs who are being attacked.
Yes,
because there is even another problem in the discussion about...
Uyghurs being targeted by Chinese government.
You have the Kazakhs.
And recently, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, and the other Muslims or not Muslims, underground church members are being targeted in the region. But Uyghurs are always being targeted by Chinese government because we are the majority population of our ancestral homeland, and we believe and it is true that we are rightful owner of those lands. So we should have self-determination rights, self-governing rights. We should have rights to, express our opinions. That challenged by Chinese government so far. And our very right of the practicing our religion, it is, being attacked so many years. And since 2017, it become, more serious. From that point, others are being targeted. For example, when we talk about 5th July Urumqi massacre, after the Urumqi massacre, only Uyghurs being targeted, and there are some Kazakhs and there are some Huys, but majority Uyghurs are being targeted. And if you go to China, I've been to many different places of China, Hui Muslims were able to practice their religion. They even have this green moon star flags in their restaurants. When back home, we cannot fast at the Ramadan, we cannot go to mosque, we cannot learn our religion, we cannot practice Islam. And
what is the reason for that?
Yeah, because it is very important part of Uyghur identity. And this Islamic belief, Uyghurs can easily mobilize. Correct. That's one point. And the other point is Uyghurs can preserve their identity a lot easier with Islam, because as a Muslim, Uyghurs would not get married with Chinese. And although Chinese food is famous all around the world, in Uyghur region, as Turkestan, no Uyghurs go to the Chinese restaurant to eat Chinese food, even Uyghur Christians, even the atheists. Maybe some of them, maybe few, and we cannot generalize, but there are some individuals maybe go to eat Chinese food. I mean, Yes, Islam helped us preserve our identity. It is very, very important part of our national identity.
So, because Islam is so important, we should tell to people like Dr. David and some Uyghurs who live in the West and who are Islamophobes and are afraid from Islam, we should tell them you shouldn't be shy from your culture and identity, number one. Number two, the Chinese government, let me finish, is very clear on its fight that it is doing in Xinjiang. It says we are fighting three evils, which are separatism, which means people like you that want to create an independent East Turkestan, terrorism, those people who become suicide bombers and go and kill the Chinese, and extremism. Extremism means Islam. So, if we read the extremification regulation of the Shuar,
Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region.
If we read the extremification regulation, the Chinese government, if you read it carefully, has singled out Islam as an extremist ideology which has to be rooted out. And for this reason, and even during my visit when I was in Xinjiang, that the Chinese admitted to us, they are targeting everything that you have in your culture. They are targeting the mosques, they are targeting the believers, they are targeting every aspect of life where you demonstrate your religion. And now, for the Uyghurs who live in the West, and for these people who tell us, please don't mention us, Islam, this is unscientific, because we have to tell to the world, we know that in the West there are many Islamophobes who hate Islam. There are many Islamophobes, like Dr. David was mentioning, who are very happy with what China is doing with the Uyghurs. But this should not push us to hide the truth. We should tell to the world the truth, that China in Xinjiang is fighting Islam. And as I've mentioned and you as Uyghurs, the separatism and terrorism, those people who are suicide bombers. So we condemn terrorism. And now, it is very important for the PR of the Uyghur people, when it comes to the Muslim world, that they do not hide their Islamic identity. They should tell to Muslims in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Pakistan, in Iran, in Saudi Arabia, in Albania, in Bosnia, in the West, that China is fighting us because we're Muslim. And this was my main point for doing the video against Dr. David and saying so many things that have angered our friend Mr. Arslan. Now, in the video, Mr. Arslan makes me a number of questions. He considers me to be even a liar in some cases, like the Communist Party of China has claimed as well. For example, I mentioned in my video that there are thousands of Uyghurs who are denied the right to enter the United States. And Arslan asked me, how come? Where did you find this number? Now, me, myself, personally, I know many Uyghurs who are not allowed to enter in the United States for no reason. The Americans have classified them as some kind of terrorist, whatever. And moreover, we know that in Syria, there were many Uyghurs who went to do jihad. The numbers range from 3,000, but probably even more. And many of these people have been killed by the Americans, the Russians, the Syrians, and what have you. So in my video, what I was trying to tell to our Uyghur friends is that, number one, and probably this was one of the sentences that caused so much debate in social media about what I said, is that in my humble opinion, which I might be very wrong, the Western powers use the Uyghurs. And the Americans especially, they use them whenever they want to pressure China. And for example, whenever Trump wants to get a good trade deal with them, and when the trade deal is over, they forget you. There were many Uyghurs who were angry with what I said, and they were saying, no, we have America, and there are people who go make pictures with Pompeo and Marco Rubio and other extremist American leaders. And I dare to differ with them. But even if I'm wrong, like Halmurat is laughing and it seems he has a different opinion from me, at least we should learn how to tolerate each other.
Absolutely.
For example, when I mentioned the number that there are thousands of Uyghurs who cannot enter in the United States, Mr. Arslan was angry and telling me, where did you find this number? How come? But let me give you the numbers, sir. Do we agree that there were 3,000 or more Uyghurs who went to Syria? Yes. These people have been declared by the Americans as terrorists. And these people have either to be drowned by the Americans or to be considered as terrorists for the rest of their life. We have many Uyghurs who were sent to Guantanamo and tortured by the Americans. Why I'm mentioning these facts? I'm mentioning these facts in order for you, Muslim brothers and sisters who see this video, to understand that, in my opinion, the Uyghurs sometimes are a ping-pong ball between two great and evil superpowers, which are the United States and China. China is the worst. They have invaded your land, they send you to concentration camps and so many things. But even Americans are not much better. I know that there are many Uyghurs who not feel comfortable with what I say, because at this very moment the American Congress have brought the Uyghur Act, is doing a lot of lobbying for you. I agree with that. And some people were mentioning to me, how you dare you speak about America, they liberated Kosovo. To some of these people I responded, listen, Americans, when they entered in Kosovo, they didn't enter for us, not for the Kosovars, because there is no humanitarian intervention in this world. They entered for their own interests, for their geopolitical game against Yugoslavia, Russia, and what have you. And after the state of Kosovo was created, the Americans didn't give to Muslims the rights that they were requiring. They built Kosovo as a secular state, as a Catholic state, I call it, which means a state based on ideology of Catholicism and French laicite, where Islam was excluded from the life of the Kosovars. And God forbid, Allahu Alam, if one day the Americans will create the East Turkestan Republic, something that is impossible for the time being, they will not allow you to have Islam as part of your identity. And for me, as a Muslim that I am, my concern is that you should be aware of the importance that your religion has for you, your culture, your tradition, because you as Uyghurs, you are, I mean, Islam played a very important role on creating you. If you go to Khotan, to Aksu, to Kashgar, you see people with different faces. Some are brown, some are white, some have blonde eyes, some have dark, some look like Chinese. And the thing...
Don't insult me.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Looking like Chinese is not a just the Chinese are human beings.
Of course, yeah.
But what made you to come together as an imagined community, it is the religion of Allah and Muhammad. You have the Mahmud Kashgari, you have your language written with Arabic script, and this is what I wanted to mention. I mean, I'm very, I'm not happy that this debate caused, in a way, some people to probably misunderstand me. Yeah. I didn't want I didn't want to have this debate at all. My debate was only with Dr. David, but even with many Western Orientalists and historians and people who represent you, because I come from a historical school where I deal with Orientalism, and I know what Orientalists have done in the past, in Greece, in Bulgaria, in Albania, in Turkey, in Armenia, how they have shaped the identities of people, sometimes pushing people to commit genocide against other people. Or in other cases, like in the case of Albania, the powers of Europe, they forced the Albanians to abandon Islam. And my worry is that for the future generation of Uyghurs, you Uyghur brothers and sisters should value Islam and not allow other people to tell them, no, you don't mention that you are in Islam, or that the Chinese are fighting you because you are Muslim. You should mention, you should not have inferiority complex about that. Islam is your religion, but you can be even Christian and atheist and whatever you want. That is your right. We live in a free world after all, but this does not mean that we should discriminate a certain religion, a certain identity. Why? Because we have some Islamophobes in the West who do not like our religion. So.
Yeah, I think like we should have a timekeeper, but I mean, like, from your speech, there's few points. I mean, like, when you mention Kosovo, Albania, and Turkey, you didn't say a Turk Muslim, Albanian Muslim, Kosovo Muslim. like you say, like for example, when I give a speech, when I introduce about Uyghurs, I say Uyghurs are predominantly Muslim. And I think we have a different interpretation of Professor David's letter. And I don't agree with you and your opinion. I don't think Professor David is Islamophobic. He is a respectful person, and I mean, like, can I didn't interrupt you, I'm sorry, like, can I just continue I mean, like, I think my interpretation of Mr. David's, like, letter is, don't use the Uyghur Muslim, this term, when you are reporting about Uyghurs, because it will mislead some people, because some people have this Islamophobic, you know, approach to the certain problems, so they would ignore Uyghurs and they will step away to help Uyghurs. I mean, like, if someone is really Islamophobic, why we need their support? And by the way, I don't believe America is Islamophobic, because in American administration, American working system, there are Muslim judges, there are Muslim, I mean, like the governors, you know, this a black sister, she is a Muslim governor.
Who is insulted by Trump and
yeah, well, can I just finish my, I mean, like, and there are the Muslims in state, working in state department, working in different, you know, the bureaucrat system of the United States government, so do in Finland, so do other Western countries. I mean, like, we cannot say, oh, they are enemy of Islam. I don't know. I don't believe this.
I didn't say enemy of Islam.
Yeah,
I
like
Islamophobic.
Islamophobic. Okay, so I mean, like, okay, it is your interpretation. I don't need to convince you. And my opinion is, when we are suffering now, and the United States of America and some other Western countries approaching to help us, and they did tremendous amount of help, tremendous amount of work to save Uyghur people, save Uyghur lives. You know, this Uyghur brother was in Qatar airport, and they take him to the America, like in a couple of days. And there are many. Can I just?
And
finish?
many other Uyghurs are being killed by Americans.
Yeah, can I just finish?
Yes.
I mean, like, okay, there are some others who went to the Syria and other parts of the world, you know, they joined this jihadist groups, extreme groups, or the terrorist groups, regardless of their ethnicity, nationality. They are trying to kill people and they are targeting others, and I don't justify violence. I mean, like, we can, and this number you say, the 3,000 or 10,000 or 5,000, we don't have access to calculate this number. We can just assume maybe a few hundred, few thousand, I don't know what is the source, you come up with this number. I mean, like, they are fighting against the ISIS or Daesh. And because some of the terrorist group members' ethnicity is Uyghur, and when they die, we say, oh, you killed my people. No. It's totally a different approach of the problem. I mean, like, we have different interpretation. We've been talking about this whole day, and Uyghur identity is being not the challenge, but attacked by the Chinese government. And our elites, our activists, and each and every one of us trying our best, you know, to fight against this Chinese tyranny and try to liberate and save our brothers and sisters who are suffering in concentration camps. Regardless of our different opinions, regardless of our different approach to the problem, we don't have to demonize each other. And when you say, okay, some Uyghurs are the pawn of the CIA or others, and because of
use the term
pawn. No.
You're
yes, okay.
I said some organizations are being paid, and this doesn't give you the freedom to act. It was only a something.
It's your assumption, yes. It's your assumption. I don't know how these organizations work, but I don't believe like they're selling us they are
I'm not saying that they're selling.
No,
I'm saying they don't.
they are using their possibilities to serve our nation.
And that's very good.
And when you talk about the Turks, Albanians, others, you didn't use Albanian Muslim, or Kosovo Muslim, or Turk Muslim, or Turkish Muslim. Why we have to say Uyghur Muslim? Because Uyghur, predominantly Muslim population, when we talk about the percentage of the Uyghur Muslim among Uyghur population, it's a lot higher than many other Muslim nations. When we talk about the Egyptians, Arabs, like the Muslim percentage of the...
what is the percentage of Uyghur Muslims?
At least 99%.
In Kosovo, we have 96% of Kosovars.
Yes. So when we have more percent, the more Muslims among Uyghur population, 99%. I just assume because of my experience, and you have 96%. You don't say Kosovo Muslim because they are 4% of the others, right?
No, I say Kosovo Muslim whenever the time comes.
Yeah.
And I'm not.
We don't
shy from that.
We don't need to fight for this terminology. Some people want to say, okay, this is the Uyghur problem, and when they say about Uyghur problem, which includes Islamic faith.
My worry is this, Halmurat. I do not want the Western Orientalists and policy makers to determine the identity of the Uyghurs. It should be you, the Uyghur people, who determine your identity.
I agree with you.
And the letter of Mr. David, in a way, by suggesting to the BBC not to mention you people as Muslim, in a way, it was unacceptable for
He made his suggestion and you're making your suggestion.
I mean, after all, you Uyghurs are members of the international community. What China is doing with you, it is an Islamophobic, fascist state policy which is trying to destroy you as an ethnic group or as a nation and your religion. Yes. And now, we, the rest of mankind, should very specifically, when we condemn China, even mention what China is doing and to whom. Because here in the West, we have many fascist groups who say China is doing the right thing with these Muslims. So when we talk about the Uyghur issue,
we should get majority. We are the controller of the Western administrations or governments?
In America, you have Trump and Pompeo and Mike Pence, who are evangelical Zionists, people who worship Israelis and Israel and persecute the Palestinians. And these people, God forbid, in the future can do the same thing in the United States. We know how Trump has banned the majority of the Arab Muslim countries, the people of these countries, from entering in the United States.
You mean the Muslim ban?
Yeah, the Muslim ban. And we have Trump in United States who insult Muslims, insult Muslim MPs like Ilhan Omar and others, and says these people should go back to their shithole countries. So, I mean, in a way, Trump is more moderate than Xi Jinping, but we should be very careful about the future of our democracies in the world where we live. We should preserve our liberties and democracy and fight Islamophobia like we fight anti-Semitism. And what China is doing with the Uyghur Muslims, we should tell to the world. The letter of David to BBC was problematic because he wants the BBC to hide the truth. No, we should tell to the world, that BBC should tell to the world that China is persecuting these people because they are Muslim. And we should tell to people like the war criminal Tony Blair, who during his prime ministry in UK, we had so many suicide bombings, which I think were probably orchestrated by some secret services, and there was a huge campaign of fear against Muslim community. And after all, you, the Uyghurs of diaspora, now you want it or not, you are part of the Muslims living in the West. Today we live in a very catastrophic time of the history of mankind. We see the Uyghurs being killed and persecuted by the Chinese. We see the Syrians, the Iraqis, the Libyans, the Somalis, the Sudanese, and what have you, who are fleeing from their countries because after the fall of Soviet Union, the Americans went and bombed all these countries and destroyed their.
Even like Soviet Union was their protector?
It was not their protector, but there was an international law in the time of Soviet Union. The Americans could not behave like gangsters, like they're behaving today. And what China is doing, by the way, when it is persecuting the Uyghur Muslims in China, they're saying we're copying the United States. They say we're fighting terrorism, which in fact what China is doing in Xinjiang is state terrorism against the native Uyghur Muslims and other Muslim groups of East Turkestan. So your problem is not isolated with you guys. You are part of the international world community, and the world should know and learn. And when the world condemns China for what it is doing with the Uyghurs, it should condemn China for what it is doing against Islam and Muslim Uyghurs. And we here in the West should not hide this reality, but should tell to our Western Islamophobes that you should not copy Xi Jinping. What Xi Jinping is doing is a crime against humanity. Like we condemned Hitler during the Second World War, the same thing we should do even today. There are many people who claim in the West and say we shouldn't speak about Hitler sending Jews to concentration camps. But no, we should tell to the world that Hitler sent Jews to concentration camps. And we should condemn the anti-Semitism of Hitler, like we should condemn the state Islamophobia of Xi Jinping in Xinjiang. This is my point, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I still say, like what you said, like at the last, like the China state Islamophobia, it is true, because Islam or the Muslim is the, how to say, the very important part of the Uyghur identity. So China adopted this Islamophobic approach to the problem after the 9/11. Before that, they always accused us as a separatist. So maybe in the future, if something else comes up, China would adopt something else, or even if Chinese government changes to something else, because very existence of the Uyghur people in their ancestral homeland is going to all challenging the Chinese point of the view and the Chinese empire, and the Uyghurs are actually on the front line against this Jagonic tyranny, which are evil, demonic power, which is not only persecuting the Uyghurs, but also the other groups like the Tibetan Buddhists, right? And the Mongolians, and there are Chinese Democrats, Chinese Christians, and other ethnic Falun Gong, for example, and you know, the Almighty God Church members, and there are other groups, and what they're doing in Hong Kong to the Hong Kong people, it is unacceptable. So yes, it is part of global problem, what Uyghurs facing now. And in China, because Islam is very important part of Uyghur identity, China adopted this Islamophobic approach to the problem, demonizing Uyghurs. Like you said, okay, there are few thousand Uyghurs, jihadists, or blah blah. I'm sorry, I'm not insulting you, sir. I mean, like, we don't know the numbers. Maybe 3,000, maybe more, maybe less. Yes.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. So, I mean,
I'm sorry, by the way, I'm not defending the jihadists who went to Syria,
absolutely.
but I'm also not for killing them. And moreover, for killing the Uyghur Muslims who went to Syria. Yeah. In my opinion, these Uyghur Muslims, because I want to mention this for our public who sees us, I have not seen a nation more depressed than the Uyghurs.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, there is no Uyghur that I have seen who doesn't have some kind of depression for what the Chinese have done to his family, to his mother, to his wife. And because sometimes some people ask me how come so many Uyghurs went to Syria to make jihad. I think these people, they were cheated, but For those Uyghurs who work with the American government, we should ask them to show some kind of leniency for these people. I don't think that all people who went to Syria are terrorists. Many were cheated. But look what the West is doing today with many of these people. We know these people joined a wrong war. I have my articles since 2012 when I was appealing to Muslims that we have in the Balkans and Europe. I was telling them, do not go to Syria to make jihad. We should live in our home countries and to pray for peace, because Islam is a religion of peace. But we have some brothers and sisters who happen to be Uyghurs who went to Syria. Now, the West, the Americans, the Russians, what have you, should pardon these people, should give some amnesty to these people, and we should not treat them as criminals. And for you, Uyghur brothers and sisters, you should understand the complexity of this world. On one side, we have American Congress making acts in support of your rights, which is something to be thanked for. On the other hand, we see this other picture. So the world where we live today is a very horrific world. I mean, the international law has broken down. We see wars and fightings everywhere. We see states like you have China, who uses its lethal and death machine to crush its opponents, and then we see aggressions throughout the Middle East. We see mass movement of Muslims from the Middle East towards Europe. I mean, this is a destruction of mankind. Allah, when He created us and He planted us in this planet, He planted us to live a life in peace and to enjoy the fantastic environment that God created us. But look what we are doing. We're destroying their environment, we're destroying each other, we're destroying our societies, and we're killing each other. And the case of you Uyghurs is one of the most desperate that I have seen in my life. You live like hostages in Xinjiang, surrounded by a totalitarian military fascist state, which China is. I mean, they don't let you even to pray to God. When I went to Aksu concentration camp and I saw what the Chinese were doing to you guys, they were sending you to jail only because you wanted to read the Quran, the Book of Allah, only because you wanted to communicate with your Creator. I mean, that was the most shocking thing I've ever seen in my life. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to rebel myself against the Chinese and to join you. I didn't join you because I like you because you give me money or NID gives me money. I didn't even know Halmurat before August 2019 and maybe 19, but I did it for the sake of humanity and the right of people to believe in their God. We live in a very horrible time of our history. I mean, this planet where we live, it is an amana that God gave to us to enjoy. But today we witness wars everywhere, killings, death, destruction, denying of human rights, denying of people the right to pray and to believe and to praise the mighty God. So this is a very worrying time. And our Uyghur brothers and sisters, wherever they are, in Xinjiang, in Syria, they are everywhere victims. I see Uyghurs everywhere, even in Albania they're suffering. The Albanian government doesn't give to our Uyghur brothers and sisters passports. Can you imagine? And we had these people being tortured in Guantanamo. And sometimes I wake up at night and I say, oh my God, why do these people should suffer so much? And we should pray to Allah to show mercy on you and to change the situation. And sometimes I think maybe this coronavirus maybe is a God-given curse to China to make probably Xi Jinping and his gangsters behind him to think and reflect, and maybe to think that we are doing so much harm to innocent people in our country, and maybe they will change their mind.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I hope our audience don't misunderstood us like we are fighting or we are advocating for different, how to say, the powers. I'm not advocating for America, I'm not advocating for the West. I just express my opinion. I mean, like, yes, America helping us a lot, and I know the American reputation in the globally, it's not like, it's always been challenging, and I'm not American citizen, but one thing that I like about America is because you can criticize them even in front of them. You cannot do that to many other countries. and they are, they're hosting the thousands of Uyghurs refugees in America. So in Europe, like in Finland, few hundred Uyghur refugees living in Finland, and maybe a few thousand in Germany and other part of the world. So they are freely practicing their religion, which is majority are Islam. And I know there are some Christians in the United States, even in Canada, even in Europe, and they are practicing their own religion as well. And in Finland, Helsinki, we have like Uyghur mosque in Helsinki. I don't live in Helsinki, so, and yes, in America, I visited Virginia, where have a significant amount of the Uyghur population. I visited their place, and they have a mosque, and they do Friday prayers in their mosque. I mean, like, they can freely practice their religion in America. And even some Uyghurs working in the American the government, despite of their being Muslim, despite of their being Uyghur, they can work and they can be part of the society. They accepted as a part of that nation, and their rights being respected. They are not discriminated because of their different face, because of different, the ethnicity. Because so those values, what we are fighting for our people. Although like the some point of Mr. Olsi, I don't agree, but I still respect his freedom of speech. So the Mr. Olsi respect my freedom of speech, and we are not trying to like to make each other change to like each other. Like I don't try to push Mr. Olsi to think like me, educate Uyghurs like what I say, and Mr. Olsi don't push me to speak my to change my point of view, my approach. How can I approach to my audience? We are fighting for our beloved Uyghur brothers and sisters, although despite our different opinions. And because of our differences, we understand each other more. And today we had a lot of talk, a lot of joke, and we says, okay, are you really willing to be on video with me? You suspect me being funded by the...
No, I don't suspect it.
No, I'm just kidding,
Yes,
yes, I
want to agree and to thank Halmurat for coming in this video. Because, friends, I received so many messages from you, even phone calls, and some people were telling me, oh, you have to delete that what you wrote, that we were getting money from CIA.
Brothers and sisters, I've been torturing Mr. Olsi that from the whole day, maybe I will torture him for another couple of days.
And I told him, I do not understand these Uyghur brothers and sisters, because some even are insulting me, they're calling me a liar, whatever. It might be,
sir, you insulted some others by your words.
But I haven't mentioned names, so I've spoken in general. It might be true that I might be wrong in certain things because I'm not perfect. And there are some things that I do not understand as you understand. But after all, we have to develop the spirit of tolerance. The spirit of tolerance which grew up here in Europe. Right now that we're speaking with Halmurat, we're in Geneva. This is one of the centers of the Rinascimento, or of Illuminism in Europe. Because Europeans, dear brothers and sisters, 300 or 400 years ago, were living under the tyranny of the Catholic Church. And Catholic Church in medieval Europe was like the Communist Party of China, which was burning books and forcing people to not speak their mind. Now, what I think it is very important for us is that we should develop the spirit of tolerance with each other. I might say, for example, one day that the earth is flat. And I mean, even though this can sound as a big stupidity on my part, I expect from you to say, okay, you are wrong, the earth is not flat, but it's so and so. But not to insult each other, because this is one of the great values that the civilization of Europe, where we are based now and we're speaking, has taught to mankind and to our planet. We should tolerate each other. And like Halmurat mentioned before, even though I'm critical of what the American government is doing against Palestinians and many other people in the world, but at the same time, many Uyghurs who live in the United States, they have freedom of belief, freedom to work and to build their lives and to have a very good life. So, I mean, the world is not black and white.
Yeah.
Why I criticize sometimes, for example, Trump for his insults against Muslims. There are other things that the US president does and are very fine and good. I mean, we live in a very complex world, but something that we have to appreciate for us who live in Europe and in the United States is that we have the freedom of speech.
Yes.
And we could not have made this video if you were to be in China now. We couldn't have had access to YouTube. I mean, CCP would have sent us to jail and concentration camp and fed us to eat more mice.
Maybe they just kick you out from the border, but for me, maybe I cannot imagine my fate.
So after all, things are not very bad for us. And we should pray to Allah that He gives freedom to our brothers and sisters in Xinjiang. And I would like to apologize to those brothers and sisters who have misunderstood me. I'm somehow controversial. I went to China and I spoiled their party, brother.
Yeah.
And I'm now not wanted in China anymore. Yeah. And I speak against Americans and against Israelis and what have you. But we do this in the name of freedom of speech. And in the United States, as Halmurat mentioned, we have free media, etc. But we have even the persecution of journalists. Like we have the case of Julian Assange, who the American government want to jail him. So things are not black and white, but in general, things are positive. And we should pray for the best for our brothers and sisters. Halmurat, do you have something else to add?
I mean, like at the end, I want to add up something like, when we talk about unity and solidarity, we always think that, okay, we all need to think at the same caliber, we all have to talk on the same caliber, we all have to have same opinion toward the same things. No, we don't need. Like, we have solidarity with Mr. Olsi, we have friendship, we have unity, although, you know, we have different opinions. Like today, when we talk to some other people about the same things, we express our different opinions. So let them have opportunity see the same thing from the different point of views, like my kind of point of view and Mr. Olsi kind of point of view. This cannot be reason
for us
to
be antagonistic to each other. Yeah.
No.
And the thing that unites us, after all, is the freedom for the people of East Turkestan, right?
Amen.
We want them to practice their religion, to live in freedom,
and like whatever their religion is,
to save themselves. Whatever religion is.
Even they have, you know, now you're not creating conspiracy again.
Okay, thank you very much, friends. And inshallah, we'll be in touch.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Salam alaikum.